Yeah. Wow. Well, when are we going to do the show here? Oh, yeah. Right. It's getting very warm in here, though, isn't it?
It's just noisy if we open up.
I started getting warm.
Okay.
Right, so how can, are we going to be okay here with class on Rosh Hashanah?
Okay, so the topic I want to do today, I want to start a whole series now on a new topic. And something that we haven't done quite enough of, and that's how to use medrash to work with people. So I gave a class like this to you once, a long time ago, when I gave another class on the topic 3 years ago. You can find it. You know what? I don't know. I'll send a link. Yeah, I'll send a link. It's on YouTube. And medrash is a tremendous. It's probably the most important resource that we have.
Or how is
So-
it different than the Agadah?
It is Agadah. Agadah is medrash. And it's especially when it comes to therapy, it's much more approachable than Gemara is.
You're sure.
And you might say that it's much more. If I had to, right? It's much more. It's much easier to extract from it the human aspect. And Gemara is a lot of times not that the Gemara is not the best source of midrashim. Also, there's a lot of Agadah in the Gemara also, but sometimes it's harder to extract it from there. And in general, you should get in the habit of learning the medrash and the parsha. So you start with Tanchuma, which is the basic one, and then move on to Medrash Rabbah. And as you get used to it, you see more and more of them. There's a medrash that's not in the parsha; it's not divided by the parshas, but it's probably the very, very basic one to learn, even before everything else. But it's not in the parsha, so we can't do a little bit. You just have to read through it once, and that's Pilkei de Rabbi Eliezer. And that's probably the most important one. And what I want to try to give you a taste of today is how like again, just a taste of how the different ways of understanding medrash, how they can be used in therapy.
Does this include Lashon text?
So that's already, like, you could say, modern medrash. It's already a story. It's not exactly an interpretation of a verse or something in the Torah. At the deepest level, what you really need to do is to figure out what story belongs to which medrash. The story is more like an illustration of how the medrash applies in day-to-day life, how a tzaddik would use the medrash. So at the ideal level, there should be a book. You should write a book. Try it again. I'm not versed enough to be able to write something like this. It's not exactly Dimyon Muda, but it's more like you would see the application, like if you would be able to connect a story of a tzaddik to a particular medrash, so you'd see an application of how that actually is used, how it works in practice. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to take a topic, the very first topic in the Torah, the creation, and I want to show you how it can be used in therapy. And the first question that has to be asked is, how many stories of creation are there, and why are there more than one? So there's not one, obviously. And even just in the Torah, there's two of them. And then there's actually a third one afterwards. In chapter 4, it begins with another story of creation. It says in chapter 4, if you remember, so it says, chapter 5, This is the account of the descendants of man. Meaning this book that we're holding here, is an account of the descendants of man. On the day that God created man, He made him in the likeness of God. He created them male and female. He blessed them and called their name man on the day they were created. And then He begins to list the descendants.
That's the second.
That's the third already. Right. The second is just chapter 2, right? So the first account, second account, and then the third account, which is a little. At first, it seems like it's just a repetition, but it's not exactly a repetition, because it's giving a whole different view on creation. Creation just being the descendants of Adam. So it starts listing them. It says Adam lived for 130 years, and he gave birth to Shet, and then he lived another 800 years, and then he passed away, and then Shet lived for such an amount of years, and you read it in chapter 5. So it's like taking creation as generations of man, that being the epitome of creation. Okay. Why does the Torah give 3 different accounts? And in fact, very interesting, if you remember, I think we discussed this once, but Rabbi Akiva says that the big klal of the Torah is V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. But Ben Zoma says that Zeh Sefer Toldot Adam, the thing we just read now, this third account, is actually a greater principle than V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Why? Because V'ahavta l'recha kamocha only includes Jews. And Zeh Sefer Toldot Adam, he says, it includes everybody. So it's not about love or not love. It's just the fact that you see that all human beings come from the same place. So this is a different story of creation altogether. And so there's a lot to talk about that. But
Who considered this the most important?
Ben Zoma says. So now the way to understand how many myths we have, how many midrashim, I fell into your language, how many stories of creation we have is, first of all, in the Torah there's 3. But then when you open up the Medrash, you see that there is many of them. Really, the first one is already divided into 2. Even before we notice it, it's already divided into 2. Why is it divided into 2?
There's 2 Eves.
Because we see that there's creation of the world, and then there's creation within the world. What's the creation in the world? So that's when He blesses the man and woman, and He says, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. There's a similar thing with the fish, that He also blesses them. And He also says them they should be fruitful. But He doesn't say you should multiply, just fruitful. And they should fill the seas. But these are like 2 different creations. What's the difference between them? The one is a creation, the first one seems to be a creation, something from nothing. And the second is already creation, something from something. But there's something more important, even, than saying whether it's something from something or something from nothing. It's that creation of the earth comes out of a single entity, out of Hashem, just Hashem alone. And the rest already requires two people. There's two entities out of which the rest comes out of. So they're very different. What is it telling you? So first of all, let's think about what is creation in the psyche? What's another word for creation in the psyche? No, what
Creativity.
creativity? That's one possible way.
Building, developing.
Development. What could be even more important than just creativity? Creativity, we'd say this is like somebody who's got a creative block. How do you start creating after you have a creative block? But there's much more than just creative block. Right, after
Understanding?
After what? You need this renewal after what?
With the
So
initial original plan.
Yeah, a person falls into depression. They have a catastrophe. They have some kind of tragedy, death. It's going to be anything that ruined, if you want, your previous existence. You have to create a new one. So, really, what this is saying is that there is not one size fits all for all the situations that people encounter in life. And you can't say, in general, just read Bereshis and it's fine. There's all kinds of different situations and people, and the way to bring somebody out of a tragedy, how to bring somebody out of a calamity, out of a depression, let's say, is that every time it's something different. So you have to know a lot of these stories, a lot of these midrashim, but how the world was created. Now, if you go on Wikipedia and you look at stories of creation, or I think maybe they call it, I think it's called stories of creation. So you'll see that in general they divide these into either 5 or 6 categories. But I didn't like any of the divisions, but let's share a little bit of them. But the point of sharing them is, can you tell me the parallel story or the parallel medrash in Torah? Okay, so the first one is ex nihilo. That's easy, right? So that's theoretically Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. It seems to be the easiest one to write what it says in chapter 1 of. But then you have this thing, they call it an earth diver. What do they mean by earth diver? They mean that some bird usually, or some animal, is sent by God into the waters, and it comes up with a little bit of dry land, or a little bit of earth, and it creates dry land. And that's how things are created. So,
Isn't that the Noah story? No?
I didn't think of that. Where would you expect these types of stories to be the creation story? 2 guesses. What kind of culture would develop?
Greek mythology. It's the story of how these stories how Rome, for example, came about.
So you're already telling us what's in Torah. But I'm saying, first of all, which culture?
In Greek culture, no?
I don't know.
Mythology.
What kind?
I mean, most cultures have got an oral tradition. The
No, but
storytellers are the-
where would a culture have to develop for them to have a story like this about creation?
Middle East?
Island cultures. If you're an island in Japan, that's their creation. If you live in England, right, the other big island off of a major continent. Australia is already too big. I don't know if they knew that they were surrounded by water. But Japan and maybe some of the Indians that lived no, but they knew that there was a lot of dry land. But Japan, it's big enough. The Japan Sea is big enough that it takes a long time to to discover that there is land on the other side.
They had this thing of these giant turtles all connected.
Right, right.
And then every time they move a little, there's an earthquake.
Interesting.
They shift their.
So, who would this work for? Try to ask the reverse question.
Fishermen?
For what kind of
More primitive, maybe?
no? Now I'm talking about in the psyche, psychologically. Who would this be a
Journey
good?
people who go off on journeys.
What is emotions?
If you're surrounded by water, what does it feel like?
Isolation.
Drowning.
You're drowning. Yeah. So if a person feels that he's drowning in, it could be in work, it could be in problems, it could be in this, it could be in that, whatever they're drowning in. So you have to start telling a medrash, you have to start using a medrash of creating dry land somewhere. So you mentioned Noach, that there's a flood, and then you're saved somehow because you're in a boat. It's not exactly the same thing. Here we want to create dry land. So where is there a midrash like that says, so you already said it. The midrash says that it's called the Italia shel Yavan, the best part of Greece. Right? Or Rome itself. There's two different... that Rome itself wasn't a real land, wasn't a land. And only when Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash, but instead of building first the Beis HaMikdash and then the house for for Pharaoh's daughter, he first married Pharaoh's daughter and built her house. So then came the Gabriel, and he sticks a kishon, he sticks a stick into the ocean and uprises Rome. And so Rome was built because he favored Shlomo, King Shlomo. He favored Pharaoh's daughter more than building a temple for Hashem. And it was like
But didn't King Shlomo build it like at a very young age? Was it? So you built
yeah,
it
but he
after
first he married her and he built her home and then he
And
finished.
It's very
It's
Jewish.
not
You're
that
supposed
he
to
started
do that
first then,
first.
but not for Pharaoh's daughter.
Then you'd have peace and quiet.
Oh, it was
It
because
also
was
says
for
that
Pharaoh's daughter.
it took him 14 years to build her home
Oh, yes.
and only 7 years to build the Beis HaMikdash.
Also, we built it on some parkland, and people resented it because they went for their picnics.
Maybe.
A
Is
Roman
this the
man.
Queen
I think
of
he got
Sheba
him
you're
confused
talking
with,
about? Which Queen of Sheba?
No,
that's-
see,
wasn't
he
it
married
Sheba?
her, but she went back to her country.
So the Queen, who was this? Of Greece?
Pharaoh's daughter.
What's your name? What's your name?
We don't know. It just says Bat Pol, Gabriel.
He put a stick
Right,
in.
and he stuck his stick into the ocean, and up came the land that Rome was built on.
So what, out of anger or?
It's not. It doesn't sound like it's anger. It sounds like it's, if anything, it's Hashem's anger. But the idea is that it's like a retribution. If you want to first marry her, then before you even build the Beit HaMikdash, I'm already creating the place that's going to destroy it. It's going to destroy it. Right? And that's what it says in the end. Before the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, Yirmiyahu says that I hated this building from the day it was built. I couldn't stand it from the day it was built. But he doesn't let us know that until the very end of the Beit
So
HaMikdash.
the home is the second Beit HaMikdash.
Right, but Chazal, that's why Chazal, like say, that's the final. They're the ones who are responsible for the final destruction. So it's like saying that you're trying to build a Beit HaMikdash. Know that because you didn't have the right thought in mind, I hated this building from the beginning, and eventually I don't want it. The Beit HaMikdash. Hashem says that about the Beit HaMikdash. I never wanted this.
Where did we find this midrash now? If we wanted to know more about it,
It's in the Gemara. Where is it
where
exactly?
would we find it if we're not learning?
I can look for the
The
sources.
second one he did?
That's why I said it's so important to
It's not
learn.
in any of the
Or
to-
any
Talmud.
Beit
to-
HaMikdash.
What?
The second one he did on, or any Beit
in Yirmiyahu it says it's about the first, but it turns out that the second was the same. It was built with the wrong intentions. With the wrong intentions,
Even if, or both of them.
both of them.
The foundation,
So that's one medrash that sort of puts you up on dry land. Is that a good one? You have to think about it. And how do you use something like that?
The plant will go screaming.
It's not a very happy story.
Not a very happy
It's not
one.
going to cure someone from feeling that they're drowning. You tell them the story that Rome was built.
But not in a day. That's why I think that was good. You tell them, wait, have patience.
I think what's very interesting here is very often it could be the reason why they're drowning is to use this midrash to help us give a diagnosis. If we take the story and see what happened to Shlomo Melech and perhaps apply it to what got them into that place. You know? So we could use it from that perspective as well, not to help them find the solution in a way, but actually help them identify why they drowned. Go with the Shlomo Melech.
That's one option. What's another option?
foundation, talk about the foundation.
So it takes brainstorming. You have to think about these things. Like how could this possibly be used in a therapeutic setting to help someone? What is
Here's a hint.
What are we trying to help them?
that ultimately is this for the good or for the bad?
Of Israel, bad.
Is what
Ultimately.
creating
There's
dry
a-
land out of water.
What is it telling you? It's telling you that even when you do bad things, there's dry land somewhere.
What road? That's such a great option.
Even when you do bad things. or when you do bad
Even when it seems that everything that you've done is not working and so on, and you did things for the wrong reasons and so on. But Hashem is always seeing what you do, and He's preparing the next step. He's always preparing the next step. So you could say it was the same thing with the second day of creation. First day of creation, "Va'aretz hayta tohu vavohu v'choshech al pnei tehom v'ruach Elokim merachef al pnei hamayim." Everything is covered with water, and Hashem's Spirit is above the waters. But then in the second day, He already sorry, and then the third day, He already brings the land up, and He's watching all the time and saying, if this doesn't work out, right? How could this have worked out? By the way, how could it have worked out that the first and second days would have been enough? Can it work?
With people, no. Just water.
Why not?
It was only water.
It was only water.
So it could
It was
have
the
had-
abyss.
We could have had people living in water, aqua people, porpoises with intelligence. No, I mean Hashem could have created anything any way He wanted. No.
In the psyche, it means. In the psyche, it means that.
There's nothing to hold on.
In the psyche, it means that if Hashem is hovering above the waters, you don't need more than that. I don't know if you remember this, but we talked about this once. That the eagle, when it comes too close to the sun, so it has to go down into the water, and it's under the water for, I don't know how long we said, for a year or whatever, 1,000 years. Don't know what it
It
was.
was a phoenix thing.
So it's like the phoenix story, but it's not exactly the same thing. And then it's rejuvenated in the water, because mayim matzmichim kol minei ta'anug. So the question is whether you're able, like the Friedrich Rebbe said, that a person who is drowning will hold on to even a straw. But that's all not in order not to have to hold on to Hashem. So what is it telling you? It's telling you, look, there are two options that you have. One is you're drowning, and the only real option is for you to hold on to Hashem. That's really the only way that you'll... But if you're not strong enough, you're drowning and you can't get out of it, you don't feel that you have enough bitachon to hold on to Hashem, you need some straw. So know that Hashem is creating for you a land. He's also creating land for you. this land is not going to be perfect. But there's always an option out.
Is it? This has been around for a long time. This midrash.
Yeah.
So you can always say there's always a way out.
There's always land, but know that there's a price to the land.
A price.
That's what it's telling you.
That's what I'm saying, Rome.
Good. It has a price to it. Eventually, you'll that'll also work out. But it's a longer path. So it's almost like I would even say that it's almost necessary. What do I mean by necessary? That we can't learn the first time how to hold on to Hashem. We need this land. And so in a certain sense, the second time there's another shvira, there's another type of shattering that occurs. But it's not as strong as the first time. You understand what I'm saying? It's like you can say to the person, if you understand now how to hold on to Hashem alone, you won't need anything at all. You can be in water and survive as long as you want. You can't. Hashem is also building you dry land to stand on. You'll get to rest. But know that resting is not yet the final resting place. Yeah. Because if you really trust in Hashem, you can be in water. It doesn't matter where you are. So you'll float in the water. You don't need the land in order to hold on, to continue to.
There are universal spiritual Jews who say that about being Jewish. You just need God, don't need the land, don't need the temple, don't
Right.
need
Mhm.
Israel, we don't need, because if you're really, really connected to Hashem, you don't need all that.
That's not exactly what I mean by being connected to Hashem.
Or else,
What you're saying is that I'm self-sufficient, maybe.
no,
That I can somehow
No.
float without.
no. That if you have Hashem, you can give away the country. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
That's how I rationalized all these jerks wanting to.
No, but they really are saying that I can run away to America.
No. That's not what I meant.
How can you survive without land? It's like you're saying, again, you're talking about physically, I'm talking psychologically.
Well, no, I'm
Psychologically,
talking
the land is like something that holds you up without you having to hold.
That's God. You can do that psychologically better than you can do that physically if you don't have.
But here we're talking about physically being here. You have to live somewhere.
But you said you can float.
Not physically you can't. Psychologically you can. Not physically.
I think you don't need to go to the midrash. I just think the first Rashi, Eretz Israel, the concept of land, and it's also full of beautiful psychological there, which ties up with this one.
So,
Is there any metric for good land? Like in that story, where something good happens on the land?
yeah, so the first story of creation is like that. The third day, Hashem brings the land out of the water.
And that's just good.
But what happens right away?
The trees don't make the fruit.
The land doesn't do what Hashem tells it to do. That's like the source.
And why does the land rebel? I've always wondered what the land rebelled.
So because you're still retaining, again, because it's like needing the land is itself retaining this unwillingness to rely entirely on Hashem. That if I was really willing to rely only on Hashem, I wouldn't need the land at all. And again, land here not in the physical sense, in the psychological sense.
What's that got to do with the trees rebelling?
The land didn't make the type of trees that Hashem told it to make. So it's like Rome. It's a rebellion. Something inherently, the symbol of land is inherently, as it were, contradictory to bitachon in Hashem. Dafka, I think it's the. So in the story there, it's definitely the land is feminine.
I mean, the feminine side in us.
It's like to say, what's the difference between being on land and being in water? Is that to stay afloat in water, you have to work all the time. And to stay afloat on land, the land does the work for you. So, land is like allowing yourself to do what you want instead of staying afloat. It allows you to begin to build your world. And if you're drowning, if you're in a sense of drowning, then really you're in a sense of working full time just to survive. Let's take it one step further. That when I serve Hashem, my feeling is constantly that I'm working very hard to stay afloat. When I'm serving Hashem.
It is.
Because I don't have gnufti yom, gnufti laila. Like I have no time, day or night. Vagita b'yomam v'laila.
So either
I
way
have
you
to
feel like
I have to
you're-
serve Hashem 24 hours a day. And so the feeling is of constant work, really. That's what it means to trust in Hashem. To trust in Hashem is work. It's hard work.
So they're both hard work.
No, but the land
So the
allows
land
me to
lets
start
you-
investing in myself without having to work hard to stay afloat.
But if you truly trust in Hashem, you would just let it all go and just let everything happen the way Hashem wants it. So that's not work. If you were truly in true bitachon, you would not have to work at all.
So that would be like if somebody could float on the water without having to do anything at all. I don't know if that works. I don't know if you can do that.
Even the fish have to swim.
Yeah, no. But
No, I mean,
in this analogy, that would be a...
okay, so definitely this story it exists in the Medrash. Then we have an emergent story. What's an emergent story? It's that this is more like what we just saw, the third story of creation in the Torah. And it's like what we'll say in a minute, the Medrash. Emergence means that humanity existed before, and it's like it goes from successive dimension to dimension until it appears here suddenly. So these creation stories, they don't focus on how the earth was created. They focus more on man, like where did we come from? Or it could be that the trees come with you and all of nature comes with you also. If you follow fantasy and science fiction and stuff like that, so they're called portals, basically. That something goes through a portal and suddenly it appears on the other side. Where is this? There are successive movements like that. So it says that the Torah was given in the 26th generation. Right? Why the 26th generation? Because Moshe is the 26th generation from Adam. It's 26 generations. But it also says that it was given le'elif do, in the 1000th generation. So how does the Medrash figure these two out?
Where does it say that? It was given Elif?
I think in Tzadik Aleph. Tzadik or Tzadik Aleph in Tehillim. So, how do we reconcile the two? So the Medrash says that there were 974 generations of man before Adam.
974?
Okay, to make it 1,000, because from Adam until the Torah, there's
Do
26.
they say man or do they say creatures? It's not man
Dorot.
as we know it. It is like, could
Yeah.
have been
It's like Dorot. Dorot of what? Generations of what?
of whatever.
So it has to be something that's related to a human being. Yeah.
Or consciousness. When you say human being, something
Maybe
that
it's
has a
consciousness,
thinking
maybe.
something. But
Yeah.
it could be...
Or maybe it's not talking about time. It's just saying the generations are like transformations, moving through successive stages of development. Meaning it took a long, long, long time until you got to Adam. Until this thing called Adam Rishon was ready to be created. So this is called an emergence. That really you came from somewhere else. And a long time ago you came from somewhere else. So what's that good for in the psyche? So this is definitely the progenitor of Gilgulim. And in general, the Baal Shem Tov didn't like Gilgulim, even though the Ari did.
Yes.
Why? I think we said this a few times. That Gilgulim sort of take the responsibility off of you.
It's not my fault.
Okay, somebody else's fault. Not only is it somebody else's fault, it gives you a feeling that maybe because it's somebody else's fault, maybe I can't rectify it. But the Baal Shem Tov, his main thing is that you can finish everything now. Like, this is a generation of Geulah. So it means you finish everything. You don't come back again.
Don't rely.
You don't rely on the next one, because you don't want it.
You mean everyone is good,
Everybody can now
not just now.
complete
Finish your work.
But he
Complete
was
everything they
300
need.
years ago, so I'm sure they've been Gilgulim since then. It's not
Why?
like now.
I don't know.
I was
Maybe there
Ram
aren't.
Cole was saying like you go a Gilgul will go to Olam, a world, okay, Neshamot, I think, and then come back. But within our, as we know, 11 months of like the mourning period, that 11 months in our time. So then 300 years doesn't work fit with that. If you're saying this is the last Gilgul, how would it fit?
So, first of all, Ramchal is not the Baal Shem Tov. He's before the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov came afterwards. So it's sort of like Baal Shem Tov gets sort of like the last say. That the Ramchal was still in that world, like the Ari zone, in that type of reality. But the main thing is, this you have to see this, to really believe it, is that all talk in this way about your past lives confuses people completely. Why does it confuse them? Because, and this has been demonstrated by people who know how to do this, when you do a regression, really it's hypnosis. You do hypnosis with a person. So, let's say I put somebody under hypnosis and I ask them, where do I live? They'll answer. And then I ask them, what's my wife's name? And they'll answer. They will answer. They will give an answer, and the audience will be amazed. How do they know? Like where they and how old is my oldest child? And they'll tell you.
About a different Gilgul, previous Gilgul.
No, about me. I'll ask him like about myself.
Another person you'll ask
Yes.
about yourself.
Huh.
You'll know the right
Ah, but there's the catch. It's not the right answer. But they say it so confidently that if you don't know that it's not the right answer, you'll be convinced 100% that how do they know this? And if I don't let on that it's not the right answer, you'll be convinced 100% that they know this. What's going on? That the unconscious mind, which was what you're tapping into during hypnosis or when you're dreaming, does not know how to not know. Whenever it needs something, it'll make it up. It's an incredible finding.
It is an incredible.
It's not like the conscious mind. The conscious mind, when I don't know an answer to something, so I say I don't know. In fact, that's the height of maturity, to know how to say Eini Yodea, that I don't know. But it makes it up, and it says it so. It itself is convinced of it 100 times. That's why dreams, you never get stuck. They just keep going. They never like, oh, wait a minute, I don't know how to drive a bus. I don't know how to fly an airplane. I don't know no, there's no such thing. In a dream, you know how to do everything. And any question that you're asked, you'll know. Because the unconscious mind simply doesn't know how to stop. It doesn't know how to say, I don't know. So what happens is when you play with these games with hypnosis and regression, there's no way you can tell, as the hypnotist or the therapist, there's no way you can know whether what you're being told is true or not. So if you ask them, did you live in Italy? Yes, I lived in Italy.
Yeah, but
Where?
if you're the one
You know what
doing it and asking the
It's not
questions.
exactly. I mean,
You know why?
there are more complicated cases
Meaning?
that people retrieved and like kilo at birth and changed the language that they don't know in the conscious mind and things like that, that, you go and you verify and
You believe it, but I'm telling you, the
I
people
believe
that do
it
it,
was written by,
the people who do it,
take and scientists.
it's like how you still can't tell whether what they're saying is something that they really know or something that they're making up at this moment. If they talk suddenly in Italian, so what does it mean?
Well, if somebody's there that knows Italian.
He knows Italian. He just doesn't.
So
Maybe he
doesn't know
doesn't
that
remember that he.
Did you know that he knows
He knew it
Italian?
when
Or
he was
an
in.
ancient
No.
language which this
No.
is now?
So that made up. If he could suddenly, if I know Hebrew, and he tells me, yes, so let's see if you can talk. He can't talk the way that I know he needs to talk. He can say maybe a word or two that he heard, but he can't do the whole thing. But that's the entire trick here, that the unconscious mind always fills something in. It fills in whatever way it wants, but it's maybe sometimes it's with things that it does know, things that it doesn't know. But there's no relationship. It's not you can't talk to the unconscious mind the way you talk to the conscious mind.
Oh, that's for sure.
The conscious mind, what I know, I know. What I don't know, I don't know. Even you see. The question is, could you put could you do a polygraph on somebody under hypnosis? The answer is no. Because you can't do a polygraph for them because they're not conscious. The polygraph works because you know that there is a difference between what you're saying and what's true. And so your pulse quickens, you sweat, all kinds of things, all kinds of tells. But when you're unconscious, there's no way to tell. He's convinced that what he's saying is true, 100%.
How does this help?
Do they know the difference between good and bad, things like this, or it's the same thing? It's like
I don't know. That I didn't read up on. Whether they know moral difference. Whether they can tell the difference between good and bad.
How does
Probably
this,
not.
How does
because
this?
Unless it's very, very in-depth inside the person.
How is this supporting? How did we get off on this?
Oh, hold on. So what he said is that that understanding, like things that I came from a long way, who knows when, and I emerged into this world, so that there's stories like that, and there's midrashim like that. But the question is whether it's good to use it or not. So in a sense, until the Arizal, that's exactly what he used. He used those notions and what he saw about the person to help him heal. But if I don't use that, what's the other direction that I can use? What's the other instead of coming from the past, what's the other option?
Future, I guess.
To the future. So what would that be? An emergence into the future. Where do we have emergence into the future? So we talk about this all the
Faith and
time.
confidence. That's hope.
Okay, that's one possibility. But mamish, were there worlds that I have to pass through?
Developmental stages.
What do we call
as we
them?
go through. Life cycle.
What do we call it in Torah? You have a name for it. Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, Atzilut, Adam Kadmon. It's like that I begin my life in Asiya. And my real self, it's like telling the person, you know why this is not what you expect it to be at, because you still have to emerge. You still haven't you're not in creation yet. You're not in the world. You're not in the final state that you need to get to.
It's an asiya.
So if you start in Asiya, so you have to go up to Yetzirah. When you get to Yetzirah, you'll see that it's completely different. Now, what does it mean? It means like a change in consciousness. Sometimes in the Medrash, it also means that somebody has to pass through a portal. Mamish pass through a portal. That's how it's described. What's an example of passing through a portal? So it says that when you're davening, to pass from one stage to the next, they only allow somebody who can talk really, really fast. So there's a lot of meanings to these things. Again, I'm just noting the Medrash now, not trying to completely explain it. But for instance, to move from Asiyah to Yetzirah, you have to be able to speak very, very fast. Not just speak fast, you have to answer questions very quickly. What is it talking about? It's talking about some kind of proficiency. That you have to gain some kind of proficiency in order to move to the next level. What's an example of that? She moved to a different... Okay. But let's give an example that it's like saying it's like a type of mastery. That to move from Asiyah to emerge, you don't just emerge because you walked. You don't just move to it. And the growth here is a mastery. Meaning you have to have everything that you have at the first level, you have to know it cold. Sometimes it means going backwards. And why are you stuck? Because there's stuff that I left behind. I moved forward, but I didn't move with the proficiency I should have. An example that in relationships this happens a lot. That
If you don't grow up and act like an adult.
let's say you have to learn how to talk to
Your mother-in-law.
you have to learn how to talk to your 2-year-old before you can talk to a 4-year-old, before you can talk to a 6-year-old, before you can talk to an 8-year-old. You have to be proficient, even if you don't have a 2-year-old anymore. But you can still do it in your mind. You can still progress that way and try to move through those stages.
So we're talking.
Therapy approaching and talking to your inner child.
It could be.
Could it be
It could be that would be a useful thing. But again, only because I'm progressing. I'm eventually emerging into where I am now.
We're talking about.
Stuck psychologically
Okay.
This is stuckness.
Right.
We can use that as a tool.
Okay. But again, don't get stuck there.
No.
Just to move forward.
We're talking about mentally or also physically speaking at proficiency?
If you have a child, I'll say it like this: that when you have children that are 6, like I have 6, 10, 12, 14. So I see, like with myself, that I talk better with a 14-year-old after I've talked with the 6-year-old, the 8-year-old, and the 10-year-old. Like if I do a progression, I come to him already. I'm in a different place altogether. You have to get that proficiency. I'm not saying that you have to do that. It's just an example. Okay? That it could be that therapy has to do with going back to the original things that you left behind and becoming proficient in them, completely proficient.
So this is why you revisit so much in your life. You're revisiting.
Right. So that we always say, like about relationships, marriage. It says in the end, if you didn't get it down, you'll end up going back to it. It's sort of like the idea of a Gilgul, but it's not in a separate lifetime. It's in this lifetime. And you have to finally finish it. You have to finally get it right to emerge to the next level.
Tshuva is really that's what
And Tshuva is like that.
Tshuva only for this lifetime.
So those are actual portals, like that you have to get the keys to open the portal. So this is a type, again, understand that in other cultures, this is the creation story. That this is how things are created.
Which story is that?
Emergence, an emergence story. What would be an example, by the way? For a long time, what was the idea that life couldn't have developed on Earth? You probably heard of that. Yeah, there were evolutionists who said that life could not have developed on Earth. Why? Because Earth hasn't been around long enough. So basically they argued that life had to have come from somewhere else. Had to have started from somewhere else. Now, if you subscribe to that, if you believe that that's your creation story, right? Where am I from? I'm not even from here. I'm from somewhere else.
beam me up, Scotty, ain't no intelligent
Right.
life
There's
down
no
there.
intelligent life down here, so beam me back up to where I came from.
But that's where we come from.
It's
We
a-
believe in that with Hashem and the soul. We say that. We don't come from here. We come from some other place and we do what we have to do here, no?
Okay. So is that good or bad?
So many people read
It's good because if you connect it with your source and you connect it from where you come and what your job is, it gives you more
Right?
purpose and
Do you
direction.
feel that there's a mission? But
Right.
if you just say it's Stam, there was a meteor that had a little bit of life on it and it crashed on Earth or something like that, or an asteroid or whatever it was, and that's what brought it. It's all Stami, it's all without kind of accidental. There's nothing essential about it. So it doesn't give you a sense of mission, but it might give you a sense that, wait a minute, maybe this is why I feel so dissonant from everything that's going on here. And it could be a way to cope with things. You're right to feel this way. You're right to feel that there's no intelligent life down here because you're from somewhere else. Okay? You're from somewhere else. But we bring that, again, what does the Medrash do? It brings it into my life. It's not something that happened 4 billion years ago, and then maybe it does relate to me, maybe it doesn't. It says, my actual life is that I was beamed down here. And so I came, so that's even a progression or an emergence that has nothing to do even with many generations before. Just I as I am. I'm from somewhere else. So I have a mission here.
What about doing the tool of rewriting the script of your life?
Re-narration.
So taking them on an imaginary journey. They use this in therapy, I know, to sort of narrative therapy.
Right. Re-narration.
Rewrite the story from a different perspective. To re-emerge through something from a different...
So that's more like, in my opinion, that's more like tshuva. That when you have new understanding, you can go back and rewrite what happened. So it's not exactly emergence. It was going backwards. I'm not emerging into something new. I'm re-emerging again.
But there's also the idea of like past and future, past, present and future, and the changing the perception of where you are, how you see your
Right,
past. You can
exactly,
change-
exactly.
The only thing you can change, you can't change the actual things that happened there, but you can change the way you view it in the present, and then you can
Right.
predict a happier future, please
Right.
God or something.
The main thing about all these things is we have to understand that the way we function is a complete product of how we see our, in the end there's no other name for it, but how our imagination places us, like what our context is. There's no context when you're born. There's no, if I just look at myself suddenly, if I can for a moment be mevatel everything around me and just place myself suddenly in this seat, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? There's a song like that from Talking Heads, if anybody ever saw it. You may find yourself, I should send you the lyrics, in a strange house, with strange clothes, with a strange wife, and you say to yourself, what is this? How have I got here?
And then how does it end?
No, it's not, I don't remember how it ends. but the point is somebody wakes up this way suddenly. He wakes up to his life suddenly. He says, what am I doing here? How did I get here? Why don't we do that? Because we have some kind of context, because something is guiding us. But you have to understand, a lot of people only have very limited context to what they're doing. And if that shatters, there's nothing around that to keep the story whole. And basically in therapy, you have to a lot of times rebuild. You have to give them a chance to adopt a deeper, or call it a more encompassing story of their lives. Story of meaning, story of who I am, where I came from, where I'm going. That's what these things do. Which one is true? I don't know which one's true. They're all true because they're all in Torah. Which one's the pshat? Pshat is what it says, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. Very nice. It gives you meaning right away, but
What does it mean?
it might not be enough. First of all, that the world is not without a... it was created by something. It's not just a mistake. It's not just random. There's something purposeful about it. But you have to understand that that's what's breaking apart in the psyche. The psyche is like layers and layers and layers of meaning. Unfortunately, most people have one or two layers only. And if they shatter, they're left basically waking up.
Yeah.
What am I doing here? So, for instance, if one of my layers is a parent, or one of my layers is when you're a young child, it's a parent, you're out to sea, right? There's nothing holding you. So you have to build a context. So it's true that the younger a person is, the more the context has to be action, because that's what they understand. So there has to be somebody to hug you, there has to be somebody to care for you. You have to feel that you're somehow encompassed, that you're held, you're contained. Yeah. As you grow older, and when you see older people, so it's no longer just these things. It has to be a psychological shell that has to be created. That's what it's like, a net that holds everything together. So part of you may not always know which creation story is going to be the best one for the person, but you can think about it. What do I feel is really shattered here? How do I sense that they feel themselves? There's a person when their story is gone, they don't have a narrative anymore, so they feel like they're drowning maybe, right? I don't have a narrative, what am I left with? I'm just so much to do and I have no idea why I'm doing it. So where's the dry land here? How do I hold myself up? And there's a person who feels that, I'm very happy with everything I've had and so on, but where am I going? Where's this all going to? Where's this all? Okay.
Can I ask a question? Maybe it's not related, but I know a person and she's got cancer and she had surgery and now she's on medication. But that medication is known to have a side effect of depression. So the question is, does she carry on? Does she ask the doctor, I don't want that medication? But it's known that medication has been around.
But she needs it for the cancer.
Yeah. So
Quality
no, and
against
she's
quantity.
by nature she's come a long way. She's a Balat Tshuva. She's done a lot. She lives here, but she says I'm having these thoughts. What's the use of it? Where am I going?
So there is like Reb Nachman's story that you have to eat from the wheat.
Yes.
But make yourself a sign.
That you're crazy.
Okay. So that you remember every time that you feel this way, remember that it's a pill that's doing it.
That
It's not you. There the answer is not to find another story exactly in the sense of I need somebody to. Here it's almost to separate myself from my condition. Dissonance here is quality. It's what you need. She needs to feel dissonant from herself. And to remember that the moment that I stop taking this is all. It's like a person who's like in a dream.
Yes.
When a dream goes bad, you wake yourself up. You don't want to continue. You don't say, okay, let me embrace the nightmare. No, the right answer is to wake up, to remind yourself that this is not you.
It's hard
Yes.
work.
So she needs a sign. She needs a sign, even if it's a physical
You have to
sign.
make that ahead of time.
Buy a ring
Yeah.
and put on the ring on the other side, like what Rabbi Yonatan and Weibschitz. Gimel Zayin Yud. Gam Ze Yavo.
When you're unconscious, you can't do that. When you're dreaming.
Why? You can't get yourself to wake up if it's really terrible?
I don't know.
A lot of people
Yeah.
can. A lot of people
That's
can.
why we wake up usually, because you're falling out
Yeah,
of a
no,
building or something, crashing a car or whatever. It's the worst time if you remember it very often. Bad dreams. There's some nice
Okay, now there's another type of story, which is dismemberment of a primordial being. Here there's a story from Chassidus that I know. Well, there's two stories actually that I know. I guess in Chassidus this is a big deal. When is this good? This is especially good, I think, when there are situations that you feel in conflict with other people, strong conflict that can't be resolved, that you don't feel that you can resolve. And so there you have to have, the Hasidic stories are better known to me. I have to think for a minute if I can remember a spiritual story like this. But meaning a medrash like this about creation. I'll probably remember in a second. But the Hasidic stories there's two of them. There's one's about the Baal Shem Tov, one's about Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk. So about the Baal Shem Tov, it's actually they're even sorry. First one is Rebbe Elimelech about the Baal Shem Tov, and the second one is about the Choyzov, about the Heilige Yid. So about, I hope I'm getting this right. We'll see in a second if it fits. So with Rebbe Elimelech, it's easy. That Rebbe Elimelech, even though he was old enough, he never went to see the Baal Shem Tov. He missed him. And so, for a long time, he was very upset about this. So he davened that he would be shown the Baal Shem Tov. Eventually he was sitting on a hill and davening, and he suddenly saw the Baal Shem Tov. But when he saw him, he didn't see him as one Baal Shem Tov. He saw him as many little Baal Shem Tovs in the figure of a big Baal Shem Tov. And then it's like the Baal Shem Tov jumped off the hill across from him, and he shattered into all the little Baal Shem Tovs. That was the vision that he saw. But he had never seen him, and there's no picture of him either. But that he was convinced that he saw him then. What was the idea there? That the Baal Shem Tov himself had said this. That he stopped once by a tree, and he said, when will the Mashiach comes? When there are enough Rebbes to have the number of the leaves on this tree. And most of them will be false Rebbes. That's what he said. Most of them will be true. But there has to be that number of Rebbes. It's not like that. So that's what Rebbe Elimelech saw. He saw that the Baal Shem Tov is like Moshe Rabbeinu, who says, Shishim ribo ragli ha'am asher anochi bekirbo. That I'm inside every single Jew. So how could a spark of him be inside of every single Jew? So he has to split himself into many, many pieces. So that's what he saw. Because he splits into many pieces, what's the main thing that you're supposed to feel? That even though I'm in conflict with somebody, we're still representations, we're still pieces of the same whole. It's the only way for a person not to go crazy with revenge and hatred and conflict. It's basically that even if I have the most terrible fight with somebody, and I'm not talking about a fight we fought once, for years we can't stand each other. And most of these fights are usually over something. And he says this and I say that. And our children don't get along. Everything's like, so how do I not let this devour my life? They have to know that in the end, both he and I were pieces of the primordial being. Different pieces. So different pieces, they're different. The Arizal does this with the neshamas. He says, the Rambam and the Ramban, one's a rationalist, one's a mystic. How can they be both teaching the same Torah in the same generation? There's only about 30 years between them. So how could it be? So he says the Rambam, he's the Pe'ah Smol. He's Gvurot. He's in that generation, he was like the left sideburn of Adam Rishon. And the Ramban, he's the right Pe'ah. So they're like pieces of the primordial being. They're like pieces of the primordial man.
It's like they have a picture in the hallway staircase in the Chayat. Did you see it? The Lubavitcher Rebbe?
Made out
It's
of
a
little
puzzle.
And it's
of
made
all the
out of
shluchim.
tons of
Okay, okay. So that's a tremendous story of creation. Again, they call this dismemberment of a primordial being, that it explains to you, or it gives you a way to cope with tremendous adversity. And also to explain why you should also not give up your own stand where you are. Why? Because you are also a piece of the primordial being.
So you go back at the source.
Okay. I'm also connected to the source, but I'm in a different place. But it's one thing. In the end, it's just one being. In the end, it's just a
Hashem
shame.
says to Eeyov, where were you at the beginning?
Okay, we'll get to that.
Chapter 32 of Tanya, that's what it's
Okay. Right. The left hand and the right hand. In the end, they're just pieces of the same body, but they can fight. In the Gemara, it's called "En tzaddik nichva michupato shel chavero," that every tzaddik has his own chuppah, meaning he has his own makif in the world. He has his own encompassing light, and they're not connected. So Reb Baruch of Mezhibush can mamish want to kill his nephew Reb Nachman. He mamish hates him, and he's the worst criminal in the world. He said Reb Nachman didn't give. He said, that's what you think, isn't it? I have my own thing to do. And in the end, it's all Avodat Hashem. So, for instance, it could also be in a family that way, that with sibling rivalries. So each one of you is, don't make it from the parents, because then it becomes like, who's the parent most like? Instead, say it's somebody 4 generations ago that nobody knows. Nobody saw him alive. You took this, and you took this, and you took this. But you're all from the same. What was the other story? The other story is much more concrete. So let's see if I remember who it was. That the Choyze and Menachem Mendel of Riminov and I don't remember. There were 4 Talmidim. I want to say it's from the Heilige Yid, but it's not. It's the Heilige Yid's Rebbe. What was his name? Because I had the same name. Yaakov Yisrael. What was his name? The one who died on Tisha B'Av. Who are we talking about? Who's the Yortzeit is on Tisha B'Av? I don't remember these things. So so it's not the Choyze. There's 4 Rebbes who were all Talmidim of one Rebbe in Poland. I don't remember who it is now. It's just escaped me completely. And each one took a different part of him. They were all with him when he passed away, and he gave the pieces out. So the Choyze got the eyes, and Menachem Mendel of Riminov got the tongue, and I don't remember who the other 2 are. One got the hands, and one got the Torah, the mind. So when you get to that, so maybe for you this is too much, but in dealing with rivalries, this is one of the most important tools that we have. That it's a story of creation here. It's what it gives meaning, and the most important thing, especially with Yidden, so that it doesn't become mamish an all-out war. In the end, they have to understand they're all pieces of the same source.
Well, you can't get everybody to agree to that. Maybe one person will get it.
You only work with one person. I don't have to
That's
worry
the
about
only
the
one
other
that has
side.
to work.
Okay. I have to get it to work for the person I'm working with.
What does it mean that each took a different part of him?
Like the Choyze got his eyes, so he had tremendous ability to see, and he got his tongue, so he was able to daven. Each one had a different talent that he took from him. That's the idea, that it's broken up into pieces. But clearly that's how we think about the world, right? That one person has this, one person has that. The whole picture, in the end, it's all pieces of Hashem. And you have to feel this in order to be able to on the one hand, hold your ground, and on the other hand, not to be caught up so terribly in the conflict that it devours you, that it consumes your life. Because it's very easy for that to happen. Especially when the conflict is really about something inherently essential. Like Reb Nachman and Reb Baruch is really an example of this. Mamish, where Reb Baruch was willing to completely throw him out of Yiddishkeit. It was his uncle.
Baruch of Meshevich, the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. He didn't like the Alter Rebbe either.
Right, he wasn't crazy about him.
After the Alter Rebbe was freed from Petersburg, Reb Nachman said, from Petersburg, the Alter Rebbe was relieved from Peterborough.
Right, Peter Baruch. Baruch, Peter Baruch. Peter is like a father, like an uncle, Peter. Yeah. From Uncle Baruch, it's much easier it's much more difficult to be released. Yeah.
Would schizophrenia be a complete misunderstanding of this, that a person doesn't feel whole, the splitting into pieces, you think?
It's very interesting. Very interesting.
In an extreme form.
The question is whether each one of them has different, really has different talents. Personalities they do. Now they don't even call it schizophrenia, but let's say schizophrenia, the classic, right? It's a multiple personality disorder.
Right.
Schizophrenia also, they live with different people.
Right, but schizophrenia is also more like hallucinations. There's somebody else who's talking to you, and what if it's usually they're taught to ignore them because they're not logical. They're not. They make them do strange things. It's usually not a logical part of the mind, meaning it's not a
split personality also. They can, one of the personalities can want to commit suicide and then hurts the other.
Right. So, but there they have no control.
Completely.
In schizophrenia, at least there's a central figure, and he hears things from different places. So I don't know. You need to think about it whether this can be used as a tool.
Case, but on everyday case, sometimes it's important to say, this belongs to you, and this belongs to the other person. You deal with your stuff, and let them take care of their own. And separating that out often is a nice way of dealing with conflict and rivalries. And let them deal with their stuff, you deal with yours.
Right.
Know what it is that you're responsible for.
Okay. Now there's the one this is the probably the one that's most useful. The splitting of a primordial unity or a cosmic egg.
What? Splitting of, is that what it's called? Splitting of a...
That's what they call it.
Splitting of what?
There was a primordial unity or a cosmic egg.
Primordial unity?
Mm-hmm.
Or
a cosmic egg.
egg.
And they also call this order from chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Or cosmos from chaos. Could be.
Could be just like.
But notice that this is everything starts from unity.
Well, yes, but the splitting is talking about
So this is what science uses today. There's a whole question: well, what is the Big Bang? Is it creation ex nihilo? Is it something from nothing? Or is it a cosmic egg? I mean, the splitting of a unity. So, certainly there's a moment of creation. So, that puts science today in a place where it at least believes that there was a moment of creation. But, it's not creation ex nihilo. It's not creation from nothing. It didn't come out of nothing. Rather, there's a singularity, whatever that means. And the symmetry inside is for some reason, compromised, and it starts breaking apart. And when it breaks apart, that's called the Big Bang. And suddenly all this matter comes into existence. In the beginning it's just energy and it becomes matter, and within a few seconds most of the universe is already in place. So this is how science thinks about things today. That's why they call it, I think, order from chaos. Because they're not talking about the cosmic egg itself was a state of unity, but something inside shifted. Something inside this egg or inside this singularity point shifted, and there was chaos. So the moment that it breaks up, it begins to reorganize, and it begins to be order. So this is a very powerful story of creation. Again, it's the one that science, and I think because of this, most people believe in this one today, or they use this as their backdrop for how they are. So first of all, where is this in Torah? Okay, so we have.
That's not Torah.
That's even before.
Shut up, it's a medrash.
It's a midrash. It's considered a midrash.
Yeah, it's
Just
the
the
Zohar.
Zohar is considered midrash.
Yeah, Zohar is a medrash. It doesn't say it in Zohar this way, but the Arizal, that's how he interpreted what it does. That's how he interpreted.
But before even the shattering of vessels, there was the whole idea of creating a vacuum. Hashem was all in it. So created in the cove, and then everything spread out from there, and then the
So how can
the
you say this
vessels
is what
grow.
science uses? This is very Kabbalistic.
So what you're saying is somebody called Rottenberg, who's in Hebrew. So he looked at all these creation stories, and he decided that there's one missing. Which one? He added one, but they don't have it in Wikipedia. It's very strange. He said Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is also part of the story, but in a sense, Tzimtzum is the Arizal's Chidush. So we haven't talked about Tzimtzum yet, and what it does to. In fact, he built his whole what he calls Jewish psychology. If you do a search on Google for Jewish psychology, we don't come up first. I think his center at Hebrew U comes up first, and his whole thing is he builds things on Tzimtzum. I'm going to say something about that in a moment, but he uses a Tzimtzum as a creation story that becomes a basis for his whole psychotherapy. Okay.
But that's ours as well. We all.
Okay, except the big difference between us and him is that he only has one. Even if it's the most Jewish, it doesn't matter, because, like I said, these all appear in Torah. You can't say one is more just because the Arizal said one. He also says others. Like we just saw, that the Shvirat HaKelim is more like the splitting of a primordial unity. And even more importantly, it's the unity that's in Olam HaKudim, which is not even called Shvirat HaKelim. There were two breakages. We usually talk only about one, but there were really two. You can use them. What I'm trying to get across is that there's a few dozen, really, and you'll see that there's more. We're not done. So, but why these five? Because these are the ones that Eliade, the famous Hungarian or Romanian, whatever, anthropologist. I never know how you say his first name. Melkia, something. I don't know how to say it. But he was one of the first people to talk about creation myths and how they affect a culture. He was very big on cultures, understanding cultures and their development. So he brings these five, and then comes Rottenberg, who was very much influenced by him, and says, but he missed one. He didn't miss just one. Maybe he missed a dozen. But why? Because there's no nation in the world that says Tzimtzum as a story. And Eliade, I think he was Jewish even, but I'm not 100% sure. He wasn't familiar with Medrash. He wasn't familiar with Kabbalah, so he didn't know. So for Rottenberg, it was a big deal, and he made his career out of this. He really made his career out of this. he wanted to show that really the Christian, one of the things he did, he split the Judeo-Christian tradition. That's one of the things he was very keen on, that there's no such thing, he argued. There's the Jewish tradition and there's the Christian tradition, and they're not similar. And so one of the things that he split was when he introduced this whole idea of tzimtzum. He used that to show one of the big differences. Okay, but getting back to the splitting of a primordial unity or order from chaos. So this is one of the main ones. This is how most of Kabbalah. This is how we learned a lot, that when you're rebuilding a person, you have to start from the emunah, right? You're like rebuilding this cosmic egg, this Humpty Dumpty that fell off the wall, and everybody's shattered, everybody's broken. And that seems to be, out of all of these, the one that is most useful in terms of therapy, just for people to understand that it's okay to be broken, that that's the natural state, right? The Kotzker's Lev Shavul, or Reb Nachman's Lev Shavul, that this is the natural state of man, because we all came from this primordial egg that shattered, and now the goal of life is to put the pieces back together again in some kind of order that makes sense.
Can I ask something? In all the years that we learned, we never ever, the teachers never ever mentioned Adam HaKadmon.
Adam Kadmon, why not?
What is that concept? I've never heard it.
So Adam Kadmon is the first putting together.
That's the last point.
It's like it would be like this Humpty Dumpty that Hashem put back together after everything was broken. It's the first man, if you want, first image, re-putting the image of man back together again from all the pieces. And in a certain sense, every person tries to mimic that rebuilding.
That's the Baal Shem Tov dream idea.
Okay.
When we use Maklokeh to bring a person to
And Adam Kadmon is like you can say it's a Tzelem Elokim if you want. Tzelem Elokim specifically is about Olam HaTzilut, but Adam Kadmon is it's also big enough. Sometimes this whole Adam Kadmon is called Adam de Bria. In the Zohar, it's called Adam de Bria. Why is it called Adam de Bria? Because there's an Adam Datzilut that was higher than him. What was the Adam Datzilut? That's what broke.
What broke?
The Adam Datzilut. There's an image of Adam even before. That was what was before the Shvirah. And that shattered. So he's Adam de Bria, or Adam Kadmon. And then what's in Atzilut is called Adam de Yitzira, and Za is called Adam de Asiyah. They're all images of man. And then reality is what's in between them. So like Bina is one image of reality, and then Nukva is another image of reality. And they relate to different levels of reality. So Tzira is Atzilut. It's how the world of Atzilut is. Olam Atzilut is called Adam de Yitzira. So it's another. You could learn this whole thing, but I'm not sure that you have to get to those levels to treat people. Okay. So.
The concept of Adam Kadmon.
So, there's a lot more to say about it, but in a nutshell, that's.
It's enough.
Okay, so basically the idea here was just to start. What's really missing here? One of the things that's most missing here, they don't say it here, but that Eliad, you see from this, I don't know if you even knew Tanakh. He just calls it ex nihilo, but he misses the point. We talked about this last week, that Hashem speaks the world into being. What is this in therapy? So this is everything. That as we speak, we're creating a new reality. You have to speak it out. Understand that you're going to change your reality when you're able to speak. In the same way that you're the spoken word of Hashem, your name. I told you about that very strong meditation that you can do and just calling out your name. It's like hearing your name being called out, because that's what you are. There's that mashal from Reb Usher that that somebody wanted to hear when he spoke Torah, you wanted to hear how the Tana was saying it, like the dead Tana, what passed away already, was saying it. It's called Svatav Dovavot Bakevel. You're supposed to hear it as if you're saying it. And it says Reb Usher that he didn't know that he saying it is what the Tana is saying. Follow? The very fact that I'm here saying this, that's what the Tana is saying. It's not that I say the words and so he says it in return. It's rather he's saying these words and that's what brings me into being. And the moment you understand, if you take this as a concept, as something that encompasses you, so you suddenly realize, wait a minute, maybe I'm not so free here the way that I thought I was. Maybe I'm not such a big novelty in the first place. I'm being spoken out now by something else. Something like that, it would be like the Matrix movies are like that. That I'm not as free as I think. But Reb Usher, it's not some diabolical scheme. It's rather that the Tana, he continues to speak, and you're one of the things that comes out of his speech. You're very holy. You're this words of Torah. That's what you are. Okay. The point being that, so here I have a list of 6 more, but I don't want to get into them. We're out of time for them. The point being that you can't. That's where Rottenberg's shortcoming is. You can't build everything on one thing, because the Torah is very, very complex, and it's very varied and it's rich. And so every single story of creation that you'll find in any culture, you'll also find it in the Torah, but it's said the right way. And that's how you need to learn. You have to, if you start with the Bereshis and start reading just the Medrash Rabbah on Bereshis, or Tanchuma on Bereshis, you'll see, I think in the first 2 chapters of each of these, you'll see 5 or 6 different stories of creation that are completely different. And they also come with mishalim sometimes. One of them, Rabbi Isaac of Homel, he wrote a whole book. It's called Shnei HaMeorot, right? The 2 luminaries, which are the sun and the moon. And there's a mashal in Midrash Rabbah that shows up in Midrash Koheles also, that the world is what? It's mashal lemelech shayu lo shnei dius kosus. That's what it says. What are the 2 discs that he placed in water? This is you bring this to one of these guys who think they've seen everything. They're like, what? That's how Hashem created the world? This is the world? It's 2 discs in water, and the light reflects from one to the other. It's almost like a camera obscura, but it's not. It's a little bit different. And he wrote an entire book just to explain what in the world is this mashal trying to say about what the world is like. The main thing is that there's many, many different options. It's not just one. And for each therapy that you're doing, it might take time, but you'll hit on the right one for this person. Okay. And again, these things, they bring you out of a slump. They are able to, if it's just writer's block, great. So it could be just writer's block. And then it tells you, for instance, that creation, we didn't even get to this. One of them here is it's not even here. That there are 2 deities that are fighting between them. 2 deities that are fighting between them. Deities, 2 gods. And the result of their interaction is the world. So I said that sort of that is what we have with Adam and Chava, that out of that begins to come the world of human beings. But it's even like these 2 discs is even closer if you read the Rabbi Isaac's book. So there's a lot of there's a lot of different ones. Why did I mention this? Because a lot of times, that's how you get over writer's block. It's like you have to tell the person, well, the reason you have writer's block is because you're not interacting, you're not fighting enough with somebody. I mean, you're not in conflict. You need conflict in order to have something to write about. You need conflict to bring something out. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing necessarily. And this is a different story of creation that can be used for those situations. The story with the famous one with Rashbi and the couple that had to get divorced because they didn't have any children. That's writer's block. Why is there writer's block? Because giving birth is the same thing as writing. It even says that the pen and the ink that comes out is like it's like the seed coming out of the male. It's the same idea. And the page is the female on which it's being written. So they had writer's block. So what did he do? He forced them to get divorced.
Take the most precious
Okay,
thing.
and so you know this story, and that's a medrash. That's mamash a medrash. It's straight out of the Gemara. Maybe it's not the Gemara. Maybe it's in the Midrash Zuta. But it's a story that's well known about Rashbi, and it's an example of how conflict suddenly rekindles the ability to create. And if you don't have it, there's something missing. Not to mention, I don't know if you read Solzhenitsyn or anybody that you read on that level, without being in the gulag, what would he have written? He had to have that.
Without having cancer.
So, if you look at the Lubavitcher Rebbe, so even he agreed that the fact that it would have been better without it, but even the fact that there were misnagdim, it forces me to do more. It forces me to be more creative. So it's good to have this, and definitely the whole Gemara is this way, that the dialogue between them, the disputes, they lead to the greatest revelations. Okay, so that's just an example of there being two deities. So I don't believe in two gods. I don't have two gods. But I understand that within Hashem there's like a conflict which has to be reenacted here.
Hashem and Elohim.
Maybe Hashem and Elohim. Then they have to come together. It's Midat Adim, Midat Al-Chamim. So that's why there's 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Then the first day is on Din, and then it becomes Al-Chamim. So these are things that the moment that you use them the right way, so you could, again, it's because think of it like that the same way that we understand in nerves, that if the myelin, it's called? The myelin sheath. If that's gone, then signals don't get through. In the same way it's with the entire brain, with the entire psyche. If you don't have these encompassing stories, these containers, if you want, to contain you inside, it's very hard to function. So you always have to find a new story. You always have to find something that'll keep you going. And you have to work on it. So as part of our work is to be able to do that with somebody. So now, so for all the people that are watching online, so we're signing off because it's a little shorter today because we have some things we need to discuss that can't go public. Okay.